Hey guys, this is Ed, Paul, and Anna of Current Media, and we are here to tell you a little bit more about our sponsor.
Sportsball is a great subscription service geared towards minor league baseball fans. Each box features a different minor league team.
You get a box every 3 months with minor league baseball gear, including different styles of hats like Ed's favorite, the dad hat. The cost is less than $12 a month.
Proceeds from each box goes to More Than Baseball, the only nonprofit dedicated to the well-being of minor league baseball players.
We all know that Parents' Days are coming up this summer, so if you've got a mom or a dad or a grandma or a grandpa who are particularly difficult to buy for, but you know they're baseball fans, this is the answer, guys.
Meet your new favorite team at sportsballbox.com.
Is there anybody there?
His number one thing was, we want to have fun on this podcast. We want to laugh. We want to joke. So if anybody's ever heard any of our episodes, that's a big thing we like to do, is joke around, have fun, obviously talk about minor league baseball.
What's up, Dad Hat Crew? Ed here. And on this episode, I give you guys Eric Proffitt. He is a fellow podcaster like myself. He has a wonderful podcast called the Earn Fun Average Podcast with our good friend Johnny Bolin. Guys, gotta listen to it. It is really good. Wait, hold on a second. Am I supposed to say that? This is a podcast that is not my podcast that I'm telling you guys gotta listen to. That's just weird. Anyways, still, listen to it. It's really good. But do it after you listen to this episode, because I promise you guys are going to laugh. We also talked about his love of baseball in the city of Wichita, how he goes from loving the Wichita Wranglers to losing the Wichita Wranglers, to loving the Wichita Windnuts, to losing the Wichita Windnuts, and then now finally getting a new team, a AA team for the Minnesota Twins, the Wichita Wind Surge. We talked about the different theme nights that they have, Tumba Vacas. Totally one of my favorite. I promise you guys got to check that hat out as well. And then we talked about his Proffitt Palooza trip that he does with his brother and how he came up with that, or they both came up with that. So guys, without further ado, I give you the episode. All right. Well, I want to welcome you guys to yet another episode of the Dad Hat Chronicles. You guys already know who I am. My name is Ed. And with me today, I have my friend, my fellow podcaster, Mr. Eric Proffitt. How are you doing, my man?
I'm doing well, Ed. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, a fellow podcaster and someone who appreciates the minor leagues like we all do. So why not, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, man, let's get started. Let's go in it. Tell me, since you were young, how did you become a fan of this glorious sport that we call baseball?
I'd like to attribute it to probably having two older brothers. So I have brother Joe, who's 6 years older, and brother Nick, who's 8 years older. So Nick and Joe were going to school together. So they were in elementary, middle, high school. They were always together. But because I was 6 years younger than Joe, I never was in school with them. But of course, whatever they did, looking up to the big brothers, I wanted to do. So they were in sports. They played Little League baseball growing up. They played football in high school. So of course I wanted to do all that they did. And so then when I turned 5, my parents put me in Little League baseball. So I played baseball when I was 5 all the way up through high school. So just something I think I'd attribute to not only having older brothers, but then also 3 neighbors next door, 3 boys, all in the same kind of age range, and then 2 other boys across the street. So we had almost a full team, all within kind of a 3 little house radius growing up. So we'd play out in the front yard, and we'd use the front yard, or we'd play out in the street, or we had a park that was, I don't know, probably 2 to 3 minutes from us. So we'd either walk to the park or we'd ride our bike, and we play up there at the park, and we use our bicycles as bases and use the tires as, the base or whatever. So I'd like to say that growing up just with the older brothers and neighbors, all in kind of the same age range, that's kind of how I got started with the game of baseball.
That's awesome. A lot of people say, hey, it's my parents, or, like that's the main one. And honestly, for me, a lot of people don't know this, but like my dad was not the one who instilled the love of baseball for me, right? He's a pastor, right? So he's never really been a sports guy, I just picked it up. my brothers and all that. So I'm glad that, that someone else besides me saying, nope, it wasn't my parents, it was my brothers or something different, right?
Yeah. So of course my parents were very supportive. Like kind of like you mentioned, my dad, I wouldn't say was out there teaching me the game all the time, but whenever I had a game, whether that was baseball growing up or when I played football in high school, they were always there at all the games. I remember my dad did take me to some of when we had back then, it was the Wichita Wranglers, and he would take me to some games. So he was there, he was involved, but I'd say I kind of grew my love just because of my brothers for the most part.
That's awesome. It's all about family support. So that's amazing. Wait, so you play football. What position did you play?
So I was one of the captains. I played outside linebacker, and then I did special teams. So of course you did almost everything,
Yeah.
both sides of the ball in high school, but mostly outside linebacker.
That's awesome. I could never play. They told me, hey, you should. And I'm like, nah, I'm good. I should have played, so
Yeah.
because it looked like a lot of fun and you got to hit people. So that's always fun.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So growing up, were you involved in baseball at all? Like, I from what I understand, you worked in baseball, didn't you?
Yeah. So when I turned 16, I started, actually, my first job was at Wendy's. And then a couple of years later, while I was finishing up high school, so I started obviously that when I was, just a sophomore. But then by the end of my senior year, I started working for the Wichita Wranglers. And so I believe that was around 2003 when I worked for the Wranglers.
Mhm.
I started out and I sold merchandise. And that was back in the days when you can actually go into the stands. Now, I've been to a couple games recently where they're starting to get more vendors in the stands, but over the last couple of years,
Yeah.
they haven't really had vendors in the stands like we used to see it. But I'd go around and I'd sell merchandise or sell food or whatever. And then it got to a point where I was an usher and I was kind of in prime real estate right behind the plate, those that pay to sit right behind the plate. I had a little walkie-talkie so the boss could talk and direct people to their seats and everything. So that was a blast. I didn't work there for very long, part of the 2003 season, and then very briefly in 2004. But it was a lot of fun when I worked for the Wranglers. And that was right before they ended up going to Northwest Arkansas in 2007.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the end of that tenure before we had independent baseball that came in with the Wingnuts. So really enjoyed the time. And I always think to myself, if I didn't have the job I have now, or maybe here at some point, I might get back into minor league baseball and work there because it was a lot of fun.
There's something about it, right? Like you're just like, want to go in there, you work. Yeah, granted, you don't see much of the game, but there's just something about going to the ballpark and say that you work in baseball that, I just love that. I wish I would have stuck with it because I actually worked at at that point, the Cleveland Indians. And I was just like you. I started selling merchandise in one of the kiosks. And to this day, I remember I was freezing my patootie off, in like that 30-degree weather. But we were there and it was a lot of fun. I do not regret that at all.
Yep.
So what got you, because, you and me have we have a love for baseball. We are, American League Central, and you are a Royals fan. How that, obviously you're from Wichita, so it's just you just grew up a Royals fan. Is that just because it was the team closest to you?
Yeah, that's for the most part. So in Wichita, we're 3 hours south of Kansas City. So it is the closest major league team to where we're located. So there's a lot of Royals fans here in the Wichita area.
Mhm.
And then when the Wichita Wranglers were here from the late 80s, early 90s up through 2007, they were, for the most part, in most of the 90s and the 2000s, they were the AA affiliate of the Kansas City Royals. So that kind of helped grow my love of being a Royals fan as well. Having those guys here, Alex Gordon, who was an all-time great with the Royals, Billy Butler, Zach Greinke, he pitched here in Wichita. So he's back with the Royals right now. So that kind of helped, not only being close enough to Kansas City, where I go up quite a bit now as it is for work to Kansas City, and then obviously up there for fun. Depending on what time the game is, we can usually make a day of it, just drive up the morning if it's an afternoon game and come back. So, but I would say with the Wranglers being an affiliated team of the Royals for so long, that helped as well, because I could see him here and then get to see him play in the majors once they got called up.
Let me ask you, and this is something I've always wanted to ask somebody. So, how was the feelings that you had when they said that the Wranglers were leaving town? You know, how was that all of that emotion that happened with all of that?
It was pretty tough. It's hard to kind of get over that the team was leaving you. The ownership, obviously, at the time didn't think, and you could definitely tell towards the end of the tenure with the fan attendance and everything that it wasn't going to go over well. But, a lot of people that, big baseball fans, I think took it, I don't want to say more personally, but I think they took it harder than just your casual fan that would go out to a couple games. So to me, it kind of hurt. And then it took another year. And then we brought in independent baseball, like Ed mentioned. And it's just, it's great baseball that they played. The Wichita Wingnuts played in the American Association,
Right. Yeah.
with the likes of the Kansas City Monarchs and the Lincoln Salt Dogs, and used to be the St. Paul Saints before they got
Yeah.
bumped up to AAA. They were in the American Association, so they were an opponent for the Wingnuts. So yeah, it was, great baseball, but it's not affiliated. So you'd have some guys that had played before or were going to go into the majors, but just to not have that affiliated ball and know for sure I'm probably going to see these guys in the majors soon. It was kind of tough to take that. So, and then that was, like I said, 2007, and we just got affiliated baseball back, 13, 14 years later, just here within the last couple of years. We're in year two now with our team we have. So it took a while to get them back, but I'm glad that affiliated's finally back.
I was just gonna say, it's like, yes, you had it, you had the Wingnut, but the Wingnuts weren't there for too long either, though. At the same time, right? I mean, I love their logo. I think it was one of the greatest logos I've seen when it comes to baseball logos. But it was like, yeah, right. Like you said, it's like it's independent ball, and don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of them. I love these guys, and it's just a player willing to sacrifice and do what they need to do in order to fulfill those dreams. But you know you don't have an affiliation, to a major league club. And a lot of people look at that as, the end all be all of things. So I can understand that,
Exactly. Yep.
So the new team comes, how was that overall being taken there when you guys found out that you guys were going to get a new team?
A lot of people were skeptical, as you could probably imagine, because it didn't work in 2007 and previous when they had the Wichita Wranglers. So
right.
A lot of people would be the same way. They're like, well, if that didn't work, why do you think a new team's going to work? But like I said, that was a good 14, 15 years ago. So things changed. Different people move into the city, new people are born. The younger kids are now getting old enough they could go to the games on their own, and maybe a new brand of fans and everything. And the stadium that the Wranglers played in was built in 1934. So it was one of those very old classic ballparks. Yeah. Loved it. Loved those classic old ballparks. But at the same time, there's so many amenities that were lacking. And they just said, it's going to be too much to try to just do these renovations. So they decided to tear it down. And then finally, after a couple of years, they built the new stadium, which is fantastic, brand new, and actually a AAA ballpark originally. So we have probably a better ballpark than most would imagine now that we have a AA team, because it was originally built for AAA. So obviously for myself and, those big baseball fans who are like, okay, it's time, we need affiliated ball back.
Yeah.
Let's bring them in here. So just the detractors always, they're always going to say what they want to say about it. But for myself, I would say I was really excited for it to come back and excited to see who the team was going to be, the name, the logos, and all that.
And you yourself decided at that point when they were coming back to become a season ticket holder?
Yeah, definitely. So I have a 1-year-old. He just turned 1 about a month ago. And this was before he was born and before we planned on having our baby. So my wife and I were like, yeah, let's go ahead and get a couple season tickets. And then if she's busy with work or myself, then we have a couple older boys, we could rotate. So we only got 2 season tickets for her and I, but then we could take, one of the boys, or we can get a couple extra tickets. So we're like, yeah, let's go ahead. Let's support this team as best as we can. And then as we're supporting this team, at that point, then that's when everything shut down. And so when they were supposed to start in 2020, they didn't. And then by that time, that's when we decided to have a kid, but it was like, hey, we've already paid for it. And then, of course, they let us roll over our season tickets that we had already paid for to last year, which was the first year they finally played. And by that time, we had the kid and everything. But yeah, we're like, let's just support this team and best we can. So we ended up getting season tickets. And then some of our good friends, they end up going in with us. And so they have 2 season tickets right next to us. So if they ever can't go, they can give us their tickets or back, So basically we have the equivalent of 4 season tickets that we can use, between whoever wants to go. So it ends up turning out pretty well.
That's awesome. I love that. Supporting your local team. And let's get back to this part. It was meant to be a AAA team. And then the realignment happened.
Yep.
And then you guys got bumped down to AA.
Yeah, that was not fun. So we're excited. The Miami Marlins, they're a team that don't know a whole lot about. There's not obviously much connection at all from the Marlins down in Florida to us in Wichita. We knew the team from New Orleans was the Baby Cakes was Foldings, and then they were going to come here. And so we're like, okay, we're going to have a AAA team. So we're going to see guys either on rehab or guys that are close to making it to the majors. Now, I know I've seen some where they've skipped and jumped from AA up to the majors. I believe Alex Gordon with the Wranglers, I don't think he ever really played in Omaha until he got sent down when he was struggling early in his career, but just straight from Wichita up to Kansas City. And so I knew it could happen, but typically you would see a lot of guys that you would know more about in the AAA level.
Right.
So we're pretty excited about that. And then, like you said, as everybody knows, MLB came in and rearranged everything. And then so they moved us from AAA Miami to AA Minnesota. And as we talked about and as we talked about, you're a Guardians fan, I'm a Royals fan. Well, the Twins are in the AL Central. So I don't want a division rival. We're in Kansas City, the closest area to Kansas City. So we're in Royals country. And so we have our guys AA affiliated. That's going to be,
playing against your Royals eventually.
Exactly. It's like, well, we'll root for the local guys, the Wichita guys. But then once they get up, now it's fun because we're starting to see a lot of the guys that played here in the first season last year. And then some guys this year get called up. So it's fun to watch them. Not as fun when they get to play the Royals.
Right. Not as fun when they hit real good against your team.
Yeah, that was kind of really, I don't want to say bizarre, but just how they switched us from AAA Miami to AA Minnesota. But because they originally intended for us to be the Marlins before 2020 got canceled, that's what they built this state-of-the-art stadium here for a AAA team. And then, of course, when they changed it was like, well, we're not going to take down the stadium, destroy it, and do a AA stadium. So
it doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
A super nice AA stadium. So I love getting to go there every night.
That's awesome. And there's some real AAA ballparks out there that are just absolute gorgeous. That's one of the ones I want to go visit. The one in Columbus, the Clippers, man, that's a beautiful one. Obviously I got Durham Bulls here as well. So that's a cool one as well. So at least you're not the Fresno Grizzlies, right?
Yeah.
Who got bumped down all the way to single A. I mean, imagine taking that pill right there, like, oh.
Yeah. And I was kind of wondering, so I'm like, so when we talked about how St. Paul Saints became from independent to AAA, we were thinking, okay, well, we were the AA. If we're going to switch over to the Twins, why didn't we become the AAA and maybe St. Paul could be the AA? Obviously, it makes sense since St. Paul's right there next to the Twins. That takes, 20 minutes, however long. You could tell us when you do your trip here in a couple of weeks, how long it's going to take to get from. Yeah. So that obviously makes sense in that aspect. But that's another thing where it's like kind of hurt us like, well, we should have maybe been the AAA and just stayed AAA, but then now obviously moved to the Twins. But instead they put St. Paul from independent to AAA because of proximity and everything, and then bumped Wichita down to AA.
Funny how things work out, don't they? Like crazy how like, oh, we're taking this independent team and we're going to bring him on and, they're going to become an affiliated team. How that's crazy.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a little bit about all of a sudden, you met our mutual friend, Johnny Bolin, and decided that you guys were going to start a podcast. I know you talked about this in one of your episodes, but you've already before tried to do a podcast. When the bug hit, why decided that you wanted to do a podcast?
So that's kind of a funny story. It was almost a joke to begin with. So I didn't know Johnny that well other than on Twitter as everybody else.
Right.
He was just one that he would pretty much anytime I would comment or post on anything, he would like it. And I'm like, wow, this random guy would, likes all my Twitter posts or whatever. So I didn't really know what to do with that. But then I think that's when we started with your guys's Wednesday night Twitter space and everything. And anytime he'd put on a video or anything he'd tweet, he's just absolutely hilarious. And so
he's a funny dude. He really is.
He is. And I love his Mississippi accent, or Missouri, if you call Missouri for Paul. But I had to get that little jab in there at our friend Paul. But
right. That's good.
So I think somebody had just come out, how many people out there have a podcast? It seems like now all of our friends on Twitter, I feel like have a podcast, and somebody else had came out with one. I don't remember who it was. And so I was just kind of half-hearted, joking and said, because Johnny's so funny and I love his accent, I was like, maybe Johnny and I should start a podcast. And he kind of, laughed at it. And then a couple of days later, he sent me a message. He's like, I'm still thinking about that. And I was like, okay. A couple of days later, he's like, I'm really thinking about, is it crazy? Should we do this? And so what kind of turned into just kind of a funny joke about, hey, everybody else has a podcast, why don't we?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I honestly, I think I really want to do this, because he talks all the time about how he'd love to be a PA announcer or on-field host or radio or whatever, something that has to do with, media or whatever. So we spoke, over message for quite a while and tried to see what we could come up with, and threw out, I don't know how many countless names trying to get something to stick. And then he said, how about earned fun average? And I'm like, okay, yeah, I could see that. Well, from there, then we kind of took it from that and we kind of broke down the name. So one of the segments we do is called the profit and loss piece.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you profit, obviously that's my last name. And then I like to joke that he's the loss piece. But with profit, something that you've earned or benefited or gained. Mm-hmm. So the earn piece. And then fun, that's his number one thing was, we want to have fun on this podcast. We want to laugh. We want to joke. So if anybody's ever heard any of our episodes, that's a big thing we like to do, is joke around, have fun, obviously talk about minor league baseball. And then the average piece, we really played off of that because we knew we weren't going to be that good. So we went with that name and kind of dissected each piece of the name. And I think it ended up turning out all right. At first, like I said, I wasn't sure. We're obviously playing off of earned run average, but changing that to earned fun average. And so it's kind of rolled from there. Now we've got up and we've had over 10 episodes out there and having a lot of fun with it.
And listen, we are, I know that I'm a huge fan of it just because, like you said, it is something that I can put on and I can sit there and I can laugh. And it feels like I'm just there with you guys as you guys are having these conversations, like especially the part where, you guys make fun of Johnny for buying a Wichita hat, but not really buying a Windsurge hat, right? Like that whole thing happened. And I'm like, oh my God, this is absolute gold stuff right here. This is great. I love it.
We played off of that for, I don't know how many weeks. So he got into a conversation on one of our episodes about how he kind of took it to heart that his beloved New Orleans baby cakes left him and moved to Wichita, and he was kind of holding it against him like it was a crazy ex-girlfriend or whatever. So he's like, he's like refusing to get a Wichita Windsurge hat. I was like, well, Wichita did nothing to you, but he kind of held it against them. So we kind of played off of that for the longest time and eventually put up a Twitter poll and said, should Johnny get a Windsurge hat? And overwhelming response said, yes, you need to get a Windsurge hat. Well, then he comes out and he does what you do with the unboxing video. Right. It was a Wichita Wranglers hat. And I'm like, Johnny, that's not a Windsurge hat. Wranglers didn't come from New Orleans to become the Wranglers. They were the Wranglers and moved to Northwest Arkansas.
Right.
So from there, we gave him a hard time for the longest time about that. And then eventually my brother Joe sent him a Windsurge hat. So he has one now. And he got a Turbo Tubs, one of the Windsurge alternate identities. He got their hat. So now he does finally have a Windsurge, but we played off of that for the longest time. And I don't know how many episodes where we would talk about that, but yeah, we loved giving him a real hard time about not having a Wichita Windsurge hat, especially since he he's like, well, it was from Wichita. I was like, I know, but it was the Wranglers. Yes, the
Right.
Windsurge sell it, but
Different-
that's
different
a
team,
different team.
Now, if they would have had a Wichita Baby Cakes hat, now that's a different story.
Oh yeah.
I actually own quite a few Wichita Wind Surge hat. Um, I got the Wind Surge one with the home plate on it,
Mm-hmm.
the Tumba Vacas, and I have the Turbo Boat. So I got quite a few of them, you know. So and the Wranglers, yeah, the Wrangler can't go wrong with that one,
Yeah.
right? So I'm a fan of the team. I didn't think I was going to be a fan of. I at first I don't know what it was about the Pegasus. I wasn't too fond of it, but it just grows on you, right? So I don't know what it was about it.
Yeah, it definitely does grow on you. So as a season ticket holder, they had a special event for season ticket holders during the announcement of the team name. There's a little kind of bar and a little venue where they have some concerts at that they held that one night, and they had, drinks and appetizers and whatever. And then they rolled out this video. So we're sitting there in anticipation watching this video. And at the end, they roll out, wind surge, surging forward into the future, and, this and that. And then they showed the logo, and it's just kind of like everybody, as they do for pretty much any team, was like, I don't know, but it's grown on you, grows on me, grows on you, as like you said. So I like it at this point. Obviously they're not going to change the name because I think they have like a 10-year agreement with the Minnesota Twins at this point. So I was glad that they brought in an alternate identity. And then of course this year, they didn't do it last year in their first season, but this year they joined the Copa program. And then with the Tumbavacas, the Wichita Cow Tippers. Now that one I've heard a lot of people, because obviously being in Wichita, that means more to me. But then for those that are outside of Wichita, I've heard a lot of people love the Wichita Cow Tippers, the colors and the logo. And then when they rolled out the Wichita Turbo Tubs, or the Tub Thumpers, as Paul likes to call them, they actually, I heard from them that they said that was actually the runner up, and it was very close to being the actual name for the Wichita Wind Surge. But then they kind of explained how they thought the Wind Surge would kind of last and test, over time. And so I was glad though that they came out with the Turbo Tubs, and they play with them not just a couple of times a season, but every single Thursday. So they're actually home tonight, and they're playing as the Turbo Tubs tonight as well. So my wife's there at the game watching them as the Turbo Tubs, and I love the jersey. If you've seen it, the colors and
oh man, it's beautiful.
Yeah, but as you said, the Pegasus with the W, it's grown on you. But of course, our friend Todd Radom designed that, and he designed the Turbo Tub. So he did a really good job on all that. But yeah, it takes a little time for the logos and the names to grow on you, but it's been a couple years now. So
and like you said, it grows on you. I actually don't mind it. There are other teams out there that have worse names, like their parent club. So that's, to me, right there, a sin for minor league baseball to have the parent club name. That's just my opinion. And
yeah,
but yeah, that jersey is absolute gold for the Turbo Tubs. It is beautiful. I love it. And the Tumba Vacas jersey as well, man, like the colors, right? Like everything just pops, and it's and it's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, because you guys, like like me and Paul were, we've become good friends, and we've done all this stuff, we got our show and everything, but we've actually never met. Actually, that's not true, because that actually changed. We actually met in Minnesota. We did the Minnesota Twin Billing with a bunch of good friends. It was a lot of fun. So we've actually met. So now that actually had to be corrected. So there's that. And now back to the episode in person. But you've actually got to meet your co-host in person. How was that experience for you guys?
So that was a lot of fun. And before I jump into that, so I've actually met Paul as well. So he was the first one of our little Twitter community that I met. So it's kind of funny that I've met him first. Now I know I'm a lot closer to him in Colorado.
Yeah.
His baseball palooza trip brought him to Wichita last year, so I got to meet him. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, we joked, as we do all the time, about never meeting each other, or meeting each other in, I don't know, 7-8 years. Well, it just so happened that my brother and I did our little version. We call it Proffitt Palooza. So we kind of took Paul's name and use that. So we actually went to Alabama at the beginning of May, and we ended up going up to Nashville for a game. And then we drove down through Alabama, going to Montgomery. We went to Madison to see the Trash Pandas, got to see the Birmingham Barons. And so I was communicating with Johnny. So he had moved from New Orleans, and now he's in Wheeler, Mississippi. And it's about 2 hours from where he's at to Birmingham. So I told him when I was going to be there, and he was doing everything he could to make sure he could get over there, put it on his calendar, and it ended up working out. So we met up, and he took us to he used to live in Birmingham for a while, and he took us to one of his favorite restaurants for lunch. And so we met up with him and his wife, the CEO, and had lunch with them. And then we went over to historic Rickwood Field, and we got to record one of our episodes inside the locker room there with a guy from the Friends of Rickwood telling us all these historic stories and everything. And then we ended up going over to the Regions Field to see the Birmingham Barons and the Tennessee Smokies. So we got to spend almost an entire day together, and it was an absolute blast. He had a lot of fun, getting to meet obviously me, but my brother Joe as well. And my brother, in a parking garage after the Barons game, took a little mini bat and he knighted him as a Proffitt brother. So you might see him occasionally say, thank you, brother Joe, or brother Eric, or call himself Johnny Proffitt. So
Right.
He's an honorary Proffitt brother now. So yeah, it was a ton of fun getting to meet him. And now he's trying to do everything he can to make it to Wichita to see a Wind Surge game. And he hasn't been up to Kansas City either. So I was thinking one of the times when he comes, we could go up and see the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum.
That would be cool.
Because they have the Negro Southern Leagues Museum in Birmingham, and he told us about that. So my brother and I got to go check that out, and that's an awesome museum. So a lot of fun getting to meet up with Johnny. Glad it happened sooner rather than later. So we had those stories to tell and got to record it up a couple episodes together in person. So can't wait, even though we're so far away from Kansas and Mississippi, can't wait till we get to meet up again.
Yeah, and I think that's what the beauty of this community that you and me are part of, right? Like, I mean, this minor league community that we've got to meet so many cool people, we've got to interact with them. And I honestly, I believe this wholeheartedly that if it was a major league community, I don't think it would be the same as it is with our minor league community.
Nope, not at all. I think you're correct. I don't think that would happen.
No, I don't think so. And I don't know. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but you know what? I think, you guys need to meet up and do more recordings together. Cause I mean, that's just gold stuff, man. That was amazing.
Yeah. A lot of fun, and hope to get him. I told him he should move. If he moves to maybe like Fayetteville, that's, a little bit, not quite the in-between point from where he lived. His daughter's grown and she's moved out. So she's not even living at home. So it's just him and his wife, the CEO. So yeah, I told him he should move a little bit closer, maybe not move to Wichita, but maybe over
closer.
to
Absolutely.
Missouri or something, so we could meet up and do stuff more often. And, I don't know how well he can convince her that they should do that, but he's moved around before. So who knows? But yeah, I would love to get more interaction, get to meet up with him more at games if we can, or just go out and about.
And yes, they should. He definitely should. Johnny, you guys should definitely take him up on that one. I think that would be a great idea. So, so you said that before I go into my famous, not so famous questions here, is I wanted to ask you, because you did your Proffitt Palooza. Was that something that just spurred the moment? Was that your first time you and Joe actually did something like that as brothers?
Yeah, well, I said that it was, but then he reminded me. So when Paul did his Proffitt Palooza, his Caputo Palooza, his baseball Palooza trip last year, we ended up doing a similar trip to him, to what him and his friends did last year. So we actually went and started out in Northwest Arkansas, in Springdale, where the Naturals play, and they're about 4 hours from here, so not too bad of a drive. And then we end up going over to Tulsa to see the Drillers play. And wow! From Tulsa over to Oklahoma City, which is about an hour and a half, and then back up to Wichita, where they had a game the following day. So we actually did a similar trip to Paul did. Now, I consider this our first Proffitt Palooza trip, but he reminded me that we did a kind of a smaller one. We just didn't have a name for it at the time and didn't really classify it as such. So this was technically our second one. Now we go to Wichita State baseball. They have We go to games all the time. We went to Wranglers games, Wingnuts games. So we'd go to games and we go up to Kansas City to see some Royals games. But as far as actual travel, that was technically the second one, but the first one we considered Proffitt Palooza. And we kind of, watching all these people online and how they had these trips planned. We're like, we need to start doing this. We need to get out, see these minor league stadiums. We obviously wanted to start somewhat local, doing the kind of the region with the Naturals and the Drillers and the OKC Dodgers, and then of course Wichita. But then we wanted to expand it, so we had this trip lined up for Alabama for months, and now we've already have a tentative schedule for next year and the year after. So everybody's come to our stadium. It's like, well, we're booked up. We'll see what we can do, but we're booked up for a couple years now. We have obviously tentative plans to do. I think we're going to try to do the Pacific Northwest and see Mr. Mertens, and that go up to the Hops and some of the teams up in that area, possibly next year. And then I was thinking of a different trip because we wanted to go see the Pensacola Blue Wahoos this year, but unfortunately they were on the road, and then we didn't get to see Johnny's Biloxi Shuckers when we were in that area either. So we kind of want to go back down and pick up a couple of those teams.
Yeah. Okay. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. You know which one I'm already going to give you. Okay. Here's the very first one. You go to the ballpark. What's your drink and food of choice, my friend?
So my food of choice, I would say, is pretzel with salt and cheese. I don't know why I have to have salt. Sometimes they put way too much on it. It's probably why my doctor says I have high blood pressure, but that's a different story. So
that's a totally different story, right?
I love a ballpark pretzel. I will occasionally get a hot dog. Now, I actually got a cheeseburger last night, but I would say most off would be the pretzel. Obviously, have to get an ice cream sundae in the helmet. And the drink of choice, I like to get local beer. Most of the time, I'll drink water, but if I get a beer, it won't be all the time. But if I do, it's whatever's local. And then because they don't have it in Kansas, if I'm east of the Mississippi, it's got to be a Yingling.
There you go. Hey, my wife was super happy when they had it over at the Durham Bowl. So you'll be able to have it there, my friend.
Good.
We were super happy. I'm like, oh my God, it's here. Let's go. So that was our drink of choice at that night.
Yep.
So, and when you go with kids, it definitely helps out.
Yeah, for sure.
So, all right. If you could be in any movie, which movie would it be?
If I could be in any movie?
If you can be in any movie, old or new, something coming up, which movie would it be?
I'd have to say A League of Their Own. That's my
good
favorite
choice.
My favorite baseball movie. Maybe do a first base coach or something with Tom Hanks. He was absolutely hilarious in that, and it's my all-time favorite movie.
It's my wife's favorite movie too.
And I can sing that song that they sing in the locker room. I can sing that. I know all the lyrics because I've seen that movie so many times. So I'd probably have to say A League of Their Own.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Now. See, you shouldn't have said something like that. So now I need you to sing the song.
I'm not Pat Larson. I don't have a good singing voice.
Well, see, this is what happens when you're on a podcast. You're like, bad voice, good voice, doesn't matter. You got to sing something now, part of it, man.
We're the members of the All-American team. We come from cities near and far. We got Canadians, Irish, Swedes. We're one for all. We're all for one. We're all American.
Nice. Love it. I like it. Now, on that note, which is the worst song you've ever heard?
The worst song I've ever heard
Yep.
would be Chumbawamba Tum Thumper.
that it just gets stuck in your head and you just can't get it off of you once you start hearing it, man.
Yes.
All right. Spirit animal. What's your spirit animal?
I'd have to say a cheetah. I don't know why, other than I always want to be fast when I was growing up. And of course, they're one of the fastest animals. So I'd have to say a cheetah.
I like it. Okay. Let's take a look here. Have you ever regifted a gift?
Yes, I have.
Who hasn't?
Right.
What will be your weapon of choice in a zombie apocalypse?
I'd have to say a pitchfork.
Nice. Long enough and you can just, fend them off. Okay. I like your thinking there. What Disney princess would make the best spy?
Cinderella. I don't. That's a really tough. I don't know. Elsa. I don't know. That's a tough one.
I like it. What was your favorite show growing up?
Probably Saved by the Bell.
Oh man, I remember watching that show all the time.
Yes.
All right. What is the most annoying color?
Probably brown. It's just kind of dull and
It's like you're
not
just-
much to it.
This
Just kind of
is just
there.
right? It's just there. Okay, let's take a look here. There's so many questions, and I just want to make sure that I give you new ones because everybody prepares for this, from what I understand. And then I just, all right. Which animal do you think would be the biggest party animal?
A flamingo.
Ooh, that's a good one. I like that one. I like flamingo.
The reason I'm saying that is I'm just thinking of the Florence flamingos and how they're
Mhm.
pink and they whatever, I forgot their slogan, but basically they just like to have fun. I don't know. That just popped in my head, and I was like, I feel like they'd be a
Yeah,
party animal.
there will be a lot of fun. Kudos to that team, right? Going from the Wolves to the Flamingos and just really embracing the pink,
Mhm.
man.
Yep.
Huge fan of that team. Huge fan. And they finally got that hat. So, I had to get one. What would you rather have to deal with? Have no nose, but really good at smelling fingers.
Really good smelling fingers.
It's like, I need my nose. Forget it.
Yep.
Eric, this has been a lot of fun, my friend. Thank you for doing this. Where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, thanks, Ed. I appreciate you having me on. So I am on Twitter. It's at ePro04. And then I have a ice cream helmet account on Instagram, and that's eRocks helmet. So I just take a picture of all the ice cream sundae helmets I collect. And then you can also find Johnny and I, if you want to follow along on Instagram or Twitter, on our podcast, Earned Fun Average. It's Earned Fun Average, and average is abbreviated AVG. So Earned Fun AVG.
I like it. And I'll make sure to put all of this information on there. You have some beautiful ice cream helmets, my friend. I mean, that Wranglers, I understand you got that as a surprise, but I don't know how that happened. Cleveland Guardians, you got some cool ones there, my friend. You got some cool helmets, man.
Yep, I just kind of started the collection last year. That's how I met Paul initially, was I just Googled to try to find a little bit more about him, and his name popped up when you type in ice cream helmets, like the first 20 searches. And that's how I kind of got started with the minor league community. And
yes. Oh man, that Angels one with the wing, the old school Angels, man.
Yep.
One of my absolute favorite logos.
Yep.
By
Definitely.
far. So again, man, dude, thank you so much. I'm going to put everything, all your Twitter handles for the podcast and everything on the notes, so that way people can follow you. Make sure you guys are following him. That podcast is absolute gold, guys. And Eric, thank you so much, my friend.
Yep. Thanks, Ed. I appreciate it.
No problem. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode with Eric. Make sure you guys are following him on Instagram and on Twitter, as well as the podcast. You guys, I'm telling you, it is good. It is a lot of fun. Now, before I go, I want to make sure you guys are telling one more person about this podcast, so that way they listen to it. The more people that listen to it, the better it is. I go up on the rankings, all that good fun stuff, okay? And make sure you give it 5 stars. Now, here's the last part of the episode, okay? How do you stop a newspaper from flying away in the wind? Use a news anchor. All right, I'll see myself out. All right, guys, make sure you guys are supporting the minor leagues. See ya.
This podcast is part of the Curved Brim Media Network. Here are some of the other members of Curved Brim Media.
Hi, this is Ed Rivera of the Dad Hat Chronicles. Join me as I interview people just like you, and players, coaches, GMs, on the path that led you to become a fan of the sport.
I'm Paul Caputo, and on the Baseball by Design podcast, I talk to minor league baseball teams, designers, and other super interesting people about what these minor league baseball logos mean. And I talk a little bit about ice cream helmets.
What's up, Bucketheads? I'm Anna DiTommaso, and each week on the Baseball Bucket List podcast, I speak with a different fan about their favorite baseball memories, what the game means to them, and what's left to check off on their baseball bucket list.
Hey guys, this is Patrick Larson from the Minor League Baseball Hat History Series, and in every episode I go through the history of minor league teams through my personal collection of hats. You can find me on Twitter at PatLarson1. I hope you guys enjoy.
This is Patrick
and Corey
of BaseballMapper.com, and we have made an interactive map to help highlight all baseball teams from the majors down to collegiate summer leagues.
We want to bring you closer to baseball, so get on the site and find a team near you today.
Learn more about Curve Brim Media at curvebrimmedia.com.